Okay, let's get this started. So everyone, I'm back here today because I am annoyed. We keep on making this mistake, placing, first of all, the biggest mistake is a whole bunch of ESFJs mistyping as ENFJs, which you might think, Denzel, why is that such a big deal? I want to perfect my craft. I want to give accurate information. When I'm analyzing people, especially being an FE dominant, I don't really read statistics and all of that as much as I go out into the real world and observe and do my own type of hey, how does this relate to you? Hey, how does this relate to you? So if I hop on the ENFJ group on Facebook and a whole bunch of ESFJs are thinking that they're ENFJs and giving me these poll answers and stuff like that, I don't do that because I know better. But they're just giving me all this false information. You can see how that could be wrong. Now, you might also think, well, I mean, you guys are both FE Dom, it's just one letter difference, right? So, it's not really a big deal. But it is a big deal, and that's the problem too. So that's the problem number 2, actually. The reason why I'm here is to distinguish the ENFJ from the ESFJ. And I feel like this is way bigger of a problem than even the ENFJ versus INFJ. I probably should have done that Venn diagram first. But it's all good. I'm here. We're going to make this video. I hope that, it lands successfully. And I want to make a disclaimer. ESFJs are not inferior to ENFJs. Just like ENFJs are not inferior to ESFJs. Every single type is on the same playing field. Please hear me out when I say this. ESFJs and ENFJs have both their own strengths and their own weaknesses as individual types. Their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Neither is better than the other, neither is worse than the other. You might prefer one more than the other, which is okay. That's your own bias, that's your own opinion. But at the end of the day, every type is still the same. But there are certain markers that we should just know. One big thing is that ESFJs are way more common than ENFJs are. Way more common. Honestly, a lot of you who are watching this video, who might think that you're ENFJ, are most likely probably ESFJ. Now, of course, like I said, that doesn't mean all of you. In fact, if you're watching this whole video through and you actually learned about the functions and everything, chances are you're probably an ENFJ. Because ESFJs oftentimes don't even have the patience to really learn all the intricacies and dynamics of type. Now, that doesn't mean they don't ever like to, but it's just nothing's always, you guys get the point. But yes, there's just a really big difference between ENFJ and ESFJ. Yes, there's only one letter difference in the dichotomies, but when you look at the functions, the ENFJ's 2 middle functions are NI and SE. And the ESFJ's 2 middle functions are SI and NE. Denzel, what do these things mean? Glad that you asked. Let me explain to you. But first, let's say why people usually group them both as FE dominant by explaining what exactly FE is. The way that I defined FE, at least on my website, my blog site that you guys should all go follow, check out, whatever you guys want to do with that, is concerned with social dynamics, how we emotionally affect one another, and creating harmony by meeting people's needs. Intuitively knows the exact buttons to push in the exact order to get a desired emotional reaction from an individual or group. Extremely diplomatic, in tune with others' feelings, and makes decisions based on what is best for the group, putting his or her own personal feelings in the back seat. Can sometimes appear over-friendly and spineless. So, we're looking at both the ESFJ and the ENFJ here, both being FE dominants. FE, what I just read off there, is their dominant function. It's their thing that puts them into flow. Now, the thing here is that I, in ENFJ, wrote that FE description, and I tried to make it as universal as I possibly could, but the truth of the matter is a lot of that also has to do with that auxiliary function that's being added onto it. So just one big fact is that SFJs, ISFJs, and ESFJs do not absorb nearly as much, if any, emotions as ENFJs and INFJs do. Now, INFJs, granted, although they usually, like, online it's usually said, like, oh, like they absorb lots of emotions and everything. And I'm not saying that this doesn't ever happen, but from many of the INFJs that I speak to, that I coach, they tell me, like, I don't really relate to that. Does that mean I'm not really an INFJ? And sometimes that is the case. Like, no, you're not really an INFJ because, whatever. But that's not the reason why. However, I want to make it clear that not every INFJ is like this. In fact, it's mostly an ENFJ quality. Now, the reason why people usually think that this is INFJ is because NI is the perceiving function, so it's like antennas apparently, and it absorbs and all of that. But the thing is, TI being a tertiary function is what detaches the INFJ. Like, whoa, those are your feelings, these are mine. As opposed with the ENFJ, FE already, because the INFJ can skip over their FE, but the ENFJ is always in tune with the environment. FE is their dominant function, so even though it's a decision-making function, it has to take in the information and it has to observe what's going on before it implements certain things. And then when you have NI as an auxiliary function, you are literally absorbing the feelings of those around you. And this has been happening to me even before I knew about MBTI. Wow. Now, there's this thing called empaths and everything that we can get into. But long story short, the reason why I explain that is because that's a result of FE being with NI and SE. ESFJs and ISFJs, they don't have NI and SE in their immediate function stack. They have SI and NE. So let's describe these functions as well, and then we can probably get to the meat. So NI, introverted intuition, is the auxiliary function of the ENFJ. I defined it as being concerned with understanding patterns of people's minds and what is most probable to happen in the future. People who use this function have always been relatively detached from their own perspective, just enough to the point where they have watched their mind form patterns and then have gotten good at seeing those patterns in other people's minds. Adept at predicting the future and behavior of others by going from many ideas to a singular idea that is most likely to occur. Can seem zen-like or wise or insane. Now, that probably sounds a little bit strange to you, probably doesn't really make more sense if you want to learn more about that, because it is the most complicated function to explain, to be honest. But if you want to learn more about that, you can check out my Metacognition video, and that'll further explain, how that is. You can also check out my videos with other NFJs, especially my video with Emrys McWright. He's an ENFJ. And when I interviewed him, then we both went really into depth with NI and how it relates to us and all of that. And, even our video, me and David's videos too. But anyway, that is NI. Now, that's the ENFJ's auxiliary function, second function. The ESFJ's auxiliary function, second function, is SI, Introverted Sensing. And that is a little bit different from NI, although it could be similar, and we can see why this might get a little bit confusing. SI is concerned with details, what is tried and true and reliable. This function stores details of concrete experiences or facts to reference and potentially replicate and/or even relive later on in the future. A person who uses this function allows their own and/or others' experiences to bring light to their own identity. SI provides the individual the ability to be in tune with their own internal physical state, such as heightened sensitivity to fluctuation of health, hunger, and other inner body sensations. People who use this function are also often the types to also notice when things have been shifted or changed, can seem rigid and nitpicky. Does this sort of kind of already hit where oh, now I'm seeing the difference? Yes, SI and NI can be similar, but there's still a difference there. NI is a lot more into the pattern recognition of abstract things and concepts. SI is actually still abstract because it's an internal perceiving process. However, this is based off of like pure experiences that they've had, pure things that they've learned, pure things that they've witnessed to be tried and true. SI has once been likened by Heidi Priebe who's an ENFP. She has SI as an inferior function. She pretty much used a metaphor where like SI is the function that watches everybody hop on certain stepping stones to get from point A to point B, and sees which stepping stones are used the most. And then based off of observing that, they know which ones to like carry out as well. So you can see how this helps out a lot when it's like being used with an STJ. And even with an SFJ, it's like, okay, this is what I've seen to help people in the past or like off of TV. This is what my experiences have been. Cookies have always made people happy. And it's just a natural, like stereotype that SFJs love to like bake cookies and, give it to people because like they just know like that's that pattern in a way of like, this is the tried and true method that people are often happy when they're given this sort of thing. And it's that FE and SI is like being served in that way. However, when it comes to FE and NI, then it's more focused on things of the mind. It's more focused on things of like, looking into the future. It's more big picture focused. And so lastly, before we just jump into like even more of this meat to like really dissect it, I want to just say one more thing with the tertiary function, and that is NE versus SE. So NI always comes with SE, and NE always comes with SI. So let me just get to you with that. ENFJ, we've already went through the FE and NI. We've already went through FE with the ESFJ and ENFJ. That's both of their dominant functions. But where they differ are the two middle functions. The ENFJ has NISE, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing. The ESFJ has SINE, introverted sensing, extroverted intuition. I just read off SI and NI. Now I'm about to read off SE and NE. Hope that you can follow. SE, the ENFJ's tertiary function, is concerned with what is on an empirical level and being completely in the present moment. This function allows the individual to take things at face value and act quickly on one's feet. SE also permits the individual to be completely in tune with their body, aware of their surroundings, and have an overall heightened level of the five senses. Can seem shallow, flashy, and appear to have ADHD. So that's SE in the ENFJ. It's tertiary, that means it's the third function. It's not nearly as strong as the auxiliary and the dominant function. It's more likened to like maybe like how a 10-year-old may be able to act. Now I'm gonna read off NE in the ESFJ. Concerned with abstract concepts, theories, as well as coming up with and exploring possibilities by looking at what has already happened or what is already established, tried, and true. Can appear like a triangle stemming from one idea and then birthing many different ideas to find patterns, underlying principles, and ideas for frameworks and theories as they talk, write, or create. Can seem over-idealistic and dreamy-like. So the most classic ESFJ that probably anybody knows is Leslie Knope. Now I know that some people may think that she's ENFP because she's so in tune with her NE, the one that I just read off. And some people may even think that she's ENFJ because, she seems like she's so focused on people and this, that. But no, she's an ESFJ. What? A censor who's into abstract concepts and that creative and everything? Yes. See, Leslie is a good example of one because ESFJs, contrary to common belief, can actually seem quite intuitive because they have intuition as their tertiary function, as we just read, referring back to like what Heidi said about people using, certain stepping stones and everything, and the SI looking and observing like which stepping stones worked the best. pretty much after seeing that enough and using enough of those, it also knows, due to SI, NE can be likened to what SI already like knows, and now knows like, okay, these are the stepping stones that work the best all the time, SI. However, let me try and venture off and explore which other ones that I think could also work best based off of what I already know to be true to work best. Compare this with the ENFJ, who has NISE. They start off with the abstract concepts, or sometimes they can take in the concrete things. SE literally not visualizes, it sees what's empirically there, what's empirically true, what is fact right there, and then based off of that, it makes speculations about what it could mean, what symbolism might be behind it, what could possibly happen in the future, things like that. While SI and E sees like it pretty much like has like this track record of what has been tried and true, and what's tradition, what has always worked, stuff like that, to be like even almost like factual. And then it tries to like speculate like, okay, so based off of like what I already know from here, like how much can I physically like explore, like venture out and see like, okay, well, what if, or what if this, or what if that, or what if this, or what if that, and they're thinking of possibilities in that way. So that's that difference between those two axes. I hope that I explained that a little bit better for you guys. That being said, ESFJs honestly are often seen as more rigid. The reason why is because their SI allows them to be like, no, this is how things have always worked. This is what's going to work. I don't really want to venture out and try new things. Why should we fix it if it's not broken? They try to apply what they are already used to oftentimes, especially if they haven't really tapped into that tertiary function of NE. So ESFJs can often seem a little bit more like bossy, a little bit more rigid, even though they're like nice and everything. They're grouped in Kiersey's temperament with SJs. They are just simply like often more rigid than other types may be, although they may even lead with FE. And that's just how it is. So oftentimes when we're hearing all of these things about like, oh, FE DOMs are so this or so that, it's not to be mean and not to like say like, oh, like ENFJs are better, but oftentimes it's the ESFJs who are now giving that rap. And so like because they over represent FE, since they're like what, 13%, and then the ENFJ is like 2.5%. Like that's not right to like say like, oh, I'm seeing all of these things, especially most moms. I don't know why, but most moms are SFJs. So then next thing you know, you just have people who are like, oh, I really don't like FE users, especially FE dominance. And it's like, dang, what ENFJs hurt you? Oh, well, it wasn't an ENFJ actually, it was an ESFJ, and it was my mom. It's like, why are you grouping all of the FE dominance because of not only what an ESFJ has done, but your mother? Your mother's always going to annoy you, no matter what type the mother may be. We need to learn how to not make these hasty generalizations and say like, oh, all of these people are just bad for this reason. It's not smart. ESFJs, because of their tertiary NE, are usually the ones who get frantic. Like if you watch, once again, Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, there's been episodes where like she's like freaking out like, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or oh my gosh, what if this happens, oh my god, stop. Me personally, I can't handle that. I get annoyed with that because I'm much more of like a chill type of person, and I think it's due to my SE and I axis. It's just this calming of, okay, we're gonna get through this. I'm optimistic about my future. Think about the difference between an ISTP who's like really, really chill versus an INTP who's like, well, what if I do this? Blah, blah, blah. Now, once again, like that might not always be like the best example. That might not always be the case. But when it comes to ENFJ, ESFJ, I know so many ESFJs who just get frantic. I used to sit next to one in class. Hey, shout out to you, Becca, if you're watching this. But I used to sit next to one in class, and we actually had an ESFJ teacher who, once again, she was very rigid. She did not want to change her system. When people would like fail tests and stuff like that for years on end, then she would just see it as like, well, at least now you know how to better prepare for the next test. And it's like, you don't see the problem with yourself, but anyway, that's besides the point. We used to sit next to each other. We were really cool. And she was always like, like writing her notes and everything. And before every test, she would just start getting like very like panicky and like fretting and all of that. And that made me feel uncomfortable because I'd be like, just calm down. Like, and that's one thing that I've realized. Like when you're dealing with an SFJ versus an NFJ, NFJs usually have this sort of like STP type of demeanor where it's like, hey, relax, everything's gonna be cool, just chill, like we're gonna get ahead of this. Or like they can even when they're being assertive, but then when you're dealing with the SFJs, they're usually like frantic, like, oh my gosh, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if this happens, or what if that happens, and it's like, ugh. ENFJs, because they have SE as a tertiary function, the way that this kind of comes out for them, the way that it comes out for us, is more of indulging in sensory behavior, really over-exercise. They can often go and overeat. They can often, engage in like drunk activities or sexual things, whatever. Anything just to like, like get in their body and like, make them just feel like sensory pleasures. Now, this doesn't mean that ESFJs are not prone to doing that, but that's just more often the case when you're dealing with an NFJ. Another difference, which is huge in my opinion, is that ESFJs are usually more blunt, direct, straightforward, and pretty much not really like fanciful with their words, while ENFJs are usually more metaphorical, abstract, and they often speak maybe like in parables and like lots of like different types of like quotes and stuff, and they're usually more cryptic and strategic. Strategic is a big word because NI is all about that, that strategy, that fun, that thinking about like, oh, how can I like, word this in this certain type of way, while the SFJs, their superpower is just like being straightforward and being simple, being concrete, and all of that. They don't really want to like always overcomplicate things in that way. Usually when I'm speaking to my SFJ friends, and I'm telling them certain things, they tell me that I overcomplicate stuff. Like, oh, Denzel, that's doing too much. Like, that's too much work. I would just do this. And to me, that's like, well, that's easy to do. But for me, the fun would be in doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that and doing this, because I know how all the dominoes are going to affect each other and then play out in the end. So that strategy of doing things and having this big picture mindset is what's entertaining for me. While with the ESFJ, they're more, okay with just like jumping like from here to here and just doing everything like one swift movement and just like saying what you have to say, all of that. They're less cryptic. They analogies and metaphors and all of them, not that they never use these, but it doesn't come nearly as natural. It's like for me, if you guys watch my spontaneous speaking videos and all of that, literally I can just be sitting there and I'm just talking and then all of a sudden an analogy just comes to mind out of nowhere. When it comes to that S versus N difference, a lot of people often say like, oh, well, are you more big picture focused or are you more day-to-day focused? And I don't think that's always the case, like for certain types. However, when it comes to the ENFJ and the ESFJ, I've seen this to be pretty darn consistent. Look at Hans from Frozen, who's an ENFJ. When he was going about doing whatever he was doing, he was trying to take over the whole entire kingdom. I haven't seen this movie in forever, to be honest, like years. But from what I could remember, he had this whole strategy of how certain dominoes are going to play out, and pretty much he already had this end game in mind. Also, if you check out Raymond Reddington, I always talk about him from the Blacklist. He's an ENFJ, and he's always getting into other people's minds and like doing the most. Like, it's like, whoa, like you actually have to sit down and think about how these dominoes took place and fell over. If you check out Paul Briggs, he's an ENTJ, but same concept. It's that strategy of doing all of these different things to affect how you'll get to your end goal, which is the fun for us NJs. Like, that's the fun part. That's what we like. Now, if you look at SFJs, they're not really into strategy. Like I said, my friend. Now, that doesn't mean like, like they never ever want to do it, but I could pretty much say like majority of the time they're very against it, because they see it as like, just like I said, numerous of my SFJ friends like, oh, that's doing too much. Like, why would you go through all of that when you can just do this? So NFJs are usually more big picture focused. They want to set up a whole bunch of dominoes because they love sitting back and seeing how all the dominoes just like play out. While the SFJs, they'd be lazy. This is me using a metaphor again. They'd be lazy to actually set up all of these dominoes and everything, because that's too much work. Even if seeing the dominoes unfold and everything would get them to their end goal, they will just find a way to do it without the dominoes, which is just being straightforward and blunt. Think about SFJs, ESFJs, such as like Sharpay, from High School Musical. She was very concerned with the day-to-day hierarchy of being like on top of like the class. She wanted to really be popular in high school. Like most SFJs, whether ISFJ or ESFJ, they're usually looking for, but especially ESFJ, they're usually looking for popularity in high school or in a certain club or, stuff like that. Because FE, they see that dynamic and they want to be at the top. They want that social status. Now, within ENFJ, from what I've observed, and I've seen this, I think that we naturally just gravitate to that social status. It just happens. And I'm just speaking objectively, like people just often tend to like us, and we're not really like aiming for that, because the thing is, actually, we're thinking, no offense to the SFJs, but we're thinking like, well, why do you want to become popular and everything like over here in school? Like it's so small, or in this club, like it's so small. Why not try and become popular in the world? Why not try and go down history? Why not try and do this? Why not try and do that? It's like, oh, well, that's probably like doing too much, but that's what we're focused on. We're focused on the vision. We're focused on the legacy. Without the vision, I can't see. Like that's just what it is. So we want to set up those dominoes. We want to focus on that big picture. I'm not trying to become popular in high school. That's nice. I'm happy with it. Like that's cool. But I'm mainly trying to become popular in the world. And not in like a very vain sense, but like I want to have impact. Not saying that SFJs don't want to have impact. In fact, Sharpay and even Regina George, who's an ESFJ, also wanted to be like top of class and everything. They were like bad examples, like of unhealthy SFJs. Even when you look at like the very like good SFJs, and I'm gonna like read off a list at the end, which we're pretty much approaching. You can see that they are still not very like super big picture focused. Think of Elastigirl from The Incredibles, Helen Parr. She is an ESFJ, and even though she kicks butt and she's very good with doing that and everything, and she did enjoy the thrill of hopping into that and everything, what she really wanted to focus on was her family. And what problem is that? In fact, that's admirable. That's a really good thing to have. It's really good to be able to focus on that smaller picture sometimes and be like, hey, you guys can go save the world. You guys can go do all of that. I just want to focus on my immediate family over here. Yes, I'm Elastigirl. Yes, I have superpowers and all that. But the whole time while she's out, she's, oh, Jack, did he get fed? Oh, this, oh, that. And that's just how it is. NFJs in the past, they're so big picture focused, and usually most intuitives are, that they're usually the types that, it sounds bad, but once again, like I said, NFJs and SFJs are no better than each other. So this is our flaws. Oftentimes, we're more of the types to be like, yes, we care about our family, but family, you guys have to take a back seat to the world. We're trying to impact the world. We're trying to do this. We're trying to really like cause this impact. We're so big picture focused that it's like, why would I confine myself to just my family? I want to influence everybody around. And that's pretty much like how it is. That's why we need both. We need the people who will stay home like Elastigirl and, like, not be like a stay-home mom, but like, who will focus on their immediate family and even like become teachers or daycare sitters or everything to help us who are out doing whatever to focus on those immediate family. Is it good that we're like that? Not really, not all the time. However, we need both, because if we didn't have those big picture people, we wouldn't have the ENFJ, popular ENFJ, Martin Luther King Jr., who he had to sacrifice a lot. He sacrificed a lot pretty much to give us the rights that we now have today. If you watch his movies and everything, then he there was times where he needed to hang out with his family and everything. He should have hung out with his family, but he's like, I'm sorry, son, but I have to go and do this, I have to go and do that. He was thinking very big picture, and it sucks that sacrifice was time with his own family, but he was doing it for us. He was doing it for the grand scheme of things. That's also admirable. Just like the ESFJ, who doesn't, even if they venture out to try and save the world in that way, they still focus mainly on the immediate family, on the day-to-day. They're more focused on like, oh, I have to wash dishes today, I have to do this. What most people may think of as mundane. But we need those types of people, because if we're all thinking big picture, we're never going to get those mundane, small detail stuff done. And if we're all thinking very mundane, well, then we're never really going to like move the needle for all of that. And I think that's actually why NFJs are so much less common than SFJs, because we need y'all SFJs to really embrace who you are and continue to help us raise our children, to continue to help us with the mundane stuff. Honestly, like, I may see it as like mundane just because of how I'm wired and everything. That doesn't mean I'm not appreciative of it. We need people to handle those things. And I think that, just as like I've always said, the swan and the eagle are both beautiful creatures. However, it would be a shame to be an eagle that's training to be a swan, and a swan that's training to be an eagle. I want us all to embrace our type, to embrace who we are as people, and just become the best versions of ourselves. We need to be who God created us to be, because if we become the best versions of ourselves, that's how we can better help this world. So in order to do that, we need to be honest with ourselves and honest with each other. And we need to stop shaming each other. Yes, that person is a sensor. So what? You're an intuitive. So what? Nobody is more special than the other. Let us learn to embrace each other and grow together and love each other in a certain way. So guys, I think that I'm done with my rant. I hope that you guys can understand where I'm coming from. I hope that you guys embrace who you are. I hope that you guys continue to just love yourselves. Know that you are great. You're great. Literally, y'all are great. Share this with others. If you are an ESFJ and this video has finally shined light on that, embrace it. Like, even if you guys are more common, so what? God created you. You're still, even if you're an ESFJ, you're still you. You are still you. You're still different from other ESFJs because of your upbringing, especially having SI, because SI is the most adaptable over time. So the way you've personally been brought up, like, that's how we get that whole nurture aspect off of versus nature. Because of your SI, like, you are the most nurtured, if anything, like other SI, like just like other SI users. So like your own experiences define you. You have your own sort of like FI in that way. Embrace it. Embrace your individuality, but also just embrace like who you are. Embrace your type and bring the best version of yourself to this world. And if you're an NFJ, don't gloat. Don't think of yourself as better than other people, because we're not. We're honestly not. And I'm not just saying that because, like, oh, I'm an NFJ and I just want peace. It's true. I don't think that none of us are better than each other. So, yeah, share this video, please, if you guys don't mind, so that we can stop with this misinformation, so that we can help start spreading people actually embracing what type that they are. And yeah, I think I'm done. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments. If you guys want help with anything else, like, just let me know. Leave your own insights. I'm gonna post in the comment section or in the description my list of NFJs and SFJs for you guys to like check out. But yeah, once again, I think that's all about done and done.